Is anybody there? Okay, well, I'm going to get started in a couple seconds here. I just want to know if anybody's watching before I start talking to nobody. I'll wait a couple minutes here to see if people are getting in here, but the plan for today is to go over, we're just going to go over, hey Kayla, we're just going to go over part A of the second practice exam, if that works for you guys. And then afterwards, we'll go over uh, tomorrow in class and the next day we're going to do a little bit of a review of tech and whatever other topics you guys want me to go over. Hey, Julie. But other than that, I want to go over quickly part A of the second practice exam. All right, so I guess I'll get started here. Do you guys actually have this paper with you, or did you have the other paper? I gave this one to you guys when we were in the CAF when we were doing the car races, but this is what I think would be the best for us to go over for today. And then, like I said, I think that for the rest of the time, we're going to start doing tech review and the other, like the later parts, part C, especially of the practice exam. We're going to go over on live streams later on in the week, and I'll start to do a live stream at least try and do one every day, even though you guys are at home in the afternoon. Okay, so if we look at this one, for starters, question 1 says the human body is made up of systems that are responsible for a variety of functions. Some of the systems and functions of the human body are listed at random in the tables below. Julie's saying all of what? All of the practice exams that I gave out to you guys. Yeah, all the practice exams. Okay, so number 1, if we have to match up the system with the function. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you guys that if you have questions while I'm writing, just start writing them right away, because otherwise, I think I have a lag of about 15 to 20 seconds of what I can see of you guys writing at the same time. Okay. So the first one says helps the body absorb oxygen and eliminate carbon dioxide. Okay, so right away, that should jump out to us that if it's oxygen and carbon dioxide, this is talking about gas exchange, and that one would be respiratory. So respiratory is number 1. Then it says circulates the blood, transports nutrients to cells, and eliminates waste. Okay, so that one would be, if we're talking about your blood, that would be circulatory. Okay, then we have controls the entire organism, relays information to different parts of the body. So that's the job of our nervous system, is to be able to transmit information around our body. So transmitting information would be nervous. Okay, and just remember for that, the important thing to know for your nervous system is that you have your CNS. CNS is code for central nervous system, and the 2 parts of that are your brain and your spinal cord. Because we saw in the previous practice exam that there was an example, a question about your CNS and how you react during reflexes, and it's important for you guys to remember that your spinal cord is responsible for your reflexes. All right, and then the last one says provides the body with support, protection, and allows movement. So that would be musculoskeletal. So your skeleton, your bones, and your muscles. Okay, so if you match those up properly, then the answer to match them up, so circulatory should be number 2, musculoskeletal number 4, nervous number 3, and respiratory number 1. So it should have been A. Okay, so far so good, you guys? If anybody has any questions about this or about how to associate these systems with each other, then you could type those in now, but I'm going to start to move on to question 2. But if you have questions, don't worry, just say it and I can go back. Okay? So question 2. Question 2 is looking at cell division. And we've already talked about meiosis and mitosis in detail, and we know that there's slight differences between the two, but that both of them are occurring simultaneously in our body at all times for us to be able to make different kinds of cells. Okay, so the two types of cell division that occur in humans are mitosis and meiosis. One type of cell division is illustrated in the image below. So you have to be able to tell from this image which one we're talking about. And then afterwards, it's asking us if they're genetically different from the mother cell or genetically identical. So it says, what type of cell division is illustrated and what are the characteristics of the daughter cells produced? So here, what we're talking about when it says mother cells and daughter cells, this is the mother cell. Well, mother cell. So this is like your starting point. And they want to know when they're talking about daughter cells, the daughter cells are what you end up with. Daughter cells. Okay, and you do not need to be able to memorize all of the steps in meiosis and mitosis. That's something that if you go into biology later on in grade 11, you'll need to be able to do this. And definitely if you take biology in CEGEP, you're going to study cell division in detail and have to understand all the phases. Okay, but here at the end, in this picture, we have four daughter cells. So ending with 4. Okay, so if you end up with 4, we talked about mitosis and meiosis. So if you're splitting once and ending up with 2 daughter cells, that would be mitosis. Okay, so 2 daughter would be mitosis, and they would be identical. And you would have, they would be like 46 chromosomes. Okay, so they would be identical cells and you have 46 chromosomes. That's when you're making exact copies, when you're doing tissue repair or growth or something like that, or making new cells, okay? Meiosis is the one with 4. And they're haploid cells, which means they only have 23 chromosomes. And they're supposed to be your gametes or sex cells, okay? So I'll just write sex cells there. You need to know the term gametes for that though, so that's when you're making your sperm or ovum. Okay, so we're gonna check out our options, but what we're looking for is in this case, meiosis, and we're looking for different from the mother cell because they're not the same. They only have half the amount of chromosomes as the original one. So right away, A and B are talking about mitosis, so I'm going to cross those out because this is meiosis. Okay, so I have here meiosis, 4 daughter cells that are genetically different from the mother cell, or meiosis, 4 daughter cells that are genetically identical to the mother cell. Okay, so we said they're different, so we're going to choose C for number 2. Okay, I'm just checking out the stream here. Julie's saying her stream wasn't working for a bit and now it's working. Excellent. Great news, Julie. All good? Hopefully everybody's good. I'm going to move on to number 3. Is everybody else? It's streaming fine, I think. Did you guys miss a huge gap in what I was talking about there, or is everybody good? Cool, no one's answering from what I can tell, so I'm just going to move on. All right, so question 3 says, in the digestive tract, foods are decomposed by mechanical and chemical actions, nutrients are absorbed, and wastes are eliminated. Okay, so it says, which statement correctly associates the part of the digestive tract with its function? Okay, everybody else is saying they're good. Julie missed question 1. All right. Hopefully you're fine. Okay. Okay. So which statement correctly associates the part of the digestive tract with its function? So the digestive tract is not the whole digestive system. We have digestive tract and we also have glands. Okay. So the tract is the part that your food actually travels through. Okay. There's other parts to your digestive system that the food never goes into, but that are actually producing some kind of secretion that's going to take part in chemical digestion. Okay, So we have to see which one associates properly. So the esophagus absorbs nutrients. That one is false. Absorbs protein. I don't know why I read that wrong. Okay, absorbing protein, that happens in the small intestine. Okay, small intestine is where we're absorbing almost everything. And your esophagus is just like passing from food, from your mouth. Sorry, you guys, freaking out here. To your stomach. Okay. B says the small intestine absorbs amino acids. Well, for a second there, we might be like, I don't really remember what amino acids are, but just to let you know, amino acids are your proteins. Okay, so those are when you break down a protein into individual pieces, they're called amino acids. Okay, so proteins are made of amino acids. So small intestine absorbing amino acids, this actually looks pretty good to me, okay? So I'm going to read the rest of them, but we have talked about how many times that most of your digestion is happening in the small intestine, okay? So that looks like a pretty good option. C says the stomach breaks down carbohydrates. Okay, so this one we already said, this one's false. Stomach breaking down carbohydrates. I don't know if you guys can see this properly or not. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, stomach breaking down carbohydrates, that one doesn't work because stomach only breaks down protein from gastric juices. Okay, and carbohydrates, the complex ones like starch, start to be broken down with saliva, or generally speaking, carbohydrates are broken down with your like intestinal, like in your small intestine. Okay, so that one doesn't look too good either. The only thing being broken down in your stomach is protein. All right, the large intestine breaks down vitamins. Okay, that one is a definite no-go. So large intestine, that's where we absorb water, is the only nutrient that's being absorbed in the large intestine. And then vitamins, saying breaking down vitamins, that is also wrong because we don't have to break vitamins down. They're already broken down. Okay, so break down vitamins does not need to happen. We absorb them in the small intestine. Okay, why did I happen? Okay, this happens in the small intestine, but like you don't need to break them down at all. Okay, so we're going to cross that one out. B was the answer for this. All right, so I have Brianna saying, when did you give out that paper? I gave this paper out when we were in the CAF the other day doing the car races. Sorry if you didn't get a copy. I was going to go over part B and C of the other exam, but it turns out that the copy that I have only has every second page printed. Again, I'm sorry I did that by accident, but I will do another live stream again. Like I can do some tomorrow, some Tuesday, and we can do some for the rest of the week for the long answer questions, okay? So I just figured this is the one that I had that had all the questions, so that's what we're going to do today. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so question 4. So this one, again, so we looked at this one in the previous, like similar in the previous practice exam. So it says, the diagram below illustrates the physiology of the circulatory system. So 4 structures are labeled. So what we have to do, it says, which of the following combinations correctly names the vessels of the circulatory system and associates it with carrying oxygenated or deoxygenated blood. So there's different steps to what we need to do. First of all, we have to match each of these up with their names. Okay, so I have to realize which one is which. So number 1 is pointing here to something like we have our pulmonary circulation, which is going to the lungs. So this would be pulmonary. Okay, the other part that's going to the rest of the body is so when it's pointing up here or down here, this is talking about systemic circulation. okay? So pulmonary always means lungs. Systemic means you're going to the whole body. All right, so I'm just going to check out, first of all, number 1 here is entering onto the right side of the heart. And just remember, when we talk about the sides of the heart, it's the opposite of what you're looking at on your paper. So this is the left side of my paper, but we're looking at somebody's body. So when you're looking at somebody, what you're facing is like, what's on your left side is their right side, because we're looking from the front. So this is the right side. Okay, so it's coming into the right atrium here from the rest of the body. So number 1 should be the vena cava. Okay, the one we're looking at here is actually superior vena cava, but it does not make us decide that actually. Like, it's just telling us that in the options, it doesn't say superior or inferior, it just says vena cava. Okay, so this is bringing blood in from the whole body. So if it's coming back from the whole body, okay, so it's just come back from visiting the cells, it's gone over your whole body, circulated around your whole body, and then we have to be able to say like whether it's oxygenated or deoxygenated. So on your diagram, this should be blue because it's not carrying oxygen, it's carrying CO2. All right, so Julie is saying, do you need to know how the heart works and all the vein and artery things for the exam? Yeah, I think that you should have an idea for circulation. Let me just grab the checklist here, what it said in your checklist. But I think it is a good idea for you guys to know, like, if you can take a time to like draw out the heart and see if it makes sense to you, the way the circulation works. But like it on your checklist, like I haven't seen the exam, okay? Like it's not like I've already seen it and I'm just trying to tell you need to know everything. That's what I'm saying is like I haven't seen it. But for the circulatory system, it says I can determine the compatibility or incompatibility of blood types. That's all it says. So as long as you can do blood typing, you're supposed to be fine. But like, I don't want to make any promises to you that there's not going to be a diagram of the heart involved in the question because I haven't seen the exam yet. Okay, and all the previous exams we're looking at, they've all had questions about the heart, whether it's about like the direction of circulation or if it's pulmonary versus systemic. Like that's been in all the previous practice exams. I'm not exactly sure, so I can't tell you for sure. Okay, but like it might be a good idea to take a time to kind of like draw out these different pieces of the heart and see if you know which ones are which. Okay, so like follow. I'm gonna post a video that we watched in one of our classes on Friday. We watched a video that was kind of going through like it was drawing out the heart and going through step by step. So I'll post that on the website after this if you want to check it out. Okay. Number 2 is pointing right here, so it's like right into this part, so it's leaving from the same side of the heart. So like it's come in here from the vena cava, it's going down here, still has no oxygen. Now it's leaving to go towards the lung. Okay, so it doesn't have any oxygen right now. It's on its way to the lung to get oxygen. If it's going away from the heart, okay, so arteries are always going away. Okay, so it's going to your lungs, so pulmonary. And we have a tendency to want to write vein because it doesn't have oxygen in it. And normally most of your veins, most of your arteries would be carrying oxygen, but this is the only exception. So you've come in here from your whole body with like blood that's full of waste. Okay, so it's full of carbon dioxide as opposed to oxygen because you've just done cellular respiration. But now when you pump out of your heart, you're going to your lungs to get oxygen. So you're going to get rid of the CO2 and get oxygen, but you're not there yet. So this is pulmonary artery. Okay, they will start with artery away. So the ones that are going away from your heart are always arteries. Okay, so it's pulmonary artery, but it's carrying CO2. All right, now you've gone to your lung. So this is showing you this is your lung. It goes to your lung. Then when it's leaving your lung, so it's coming towards the heart. So that would be your pulmonary vein. But now you're just leaving from the lungs, so you're carrying oxygen. Okay, and then the last one is pointing here to number 4. So now it's gone back to the heart, into the left side of the heart, through the atrium, down to the ventricle, and then you pump through this major, major, major blood vessel. So the biggest artery in your whole body is this one, your aorta. Okay, coming right out of your heart, and it's being pumped to your whole body. So it's a massive, it's actually a massive artery. Okay, so this would be carrying also oxygen. All right, so if you check out the options below, according to what we put up here, if you match them up down here, so we have, it should be C. So vena cava has deoxygenated blood, which means it has carbon dioxide. Pulmonary artery has also deoxygenated, so carbon dioxide. Pulmonary vein, oxygenated. Aorta, oxygenated. So that's exactly what we just wrote above, so your answer should be C. All right. Question 5. So question 5 says, the neuron carries nerve impulses through the nervous system. A diagram of 2 neurons is illustrated below. It's a bit ridiculous. Okay, yeah. All right. So like, if you're checking out the diagram, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what they're pointing at. But from the options that we have below, it's only talking about an axon, a dendrite, and a synapse. So you kind of have to match up out of those 3 things which one looks like which. Because if it was pointing at this, okay, like the fatty part over top, that will be called the myelin, which is there for insulation. But it's trying to point, number 1 is pointing at just like the cord that's underneath. So it's pointing in between these 2 things. So the cord on your neuron is called an axon. Okay. This circle is, it looks right away like this is pointing at dendrites, but realistically, number 3 is pointing at the dendrites. Okay. So it's, the dendrites are like the branches. So they just pick up the signal that's coming from the previous neuron. They suck up that signal, and then it's passed along, it goes through the cell body and it's passed along the axon. But like the space, like number 2 is pointing at the space in between the dendrites, okay? So this is called the synapse. And that's where we release the neurotransmitters into, and they have to get picked up by the following neuron to be able to actually like move forward, okay? So if we have, like we talked about painkillers and things like that, if you have a painkiller, what it's doing is that it's acting inside a synapse. So they go to the site of your synapse and they actually just block the receptors on the next dendrite so that you're not picking up information. So like even like we talked about, when you've had surgery on your teeth or something like that and you take a painkiller, you can't feel the pain that's happening in your face, but your face is still sending information saying like I'm in pain, but all you're doing is blocking that information from getting to your brain. Okay, so it's blocking in the synapses to try and stop the information from getting there. Okay, so we should have had 1 axon, 2 synapse, 3 dendrites. So that should be B. Okay, number 6. So question 6, females undergo several changes during puberty. At this time, the menstrual cycle begins. So which of the following hormones is not involved in the menstrual cycle? So if we take a look down here, it's actually like you don't have to know a lot about the menstrual cycle to be able to answer this. You actually like need to just realize which one of these are male hormones and which one of these are female hormones. So like this LH and FSH are both. So in males and females, these kind of like, these are coming from your pituitary gland in your brain, and they're sending out throughout your body, and they go and stimulate, they stimulate puberty kind of. So like they start to be emitted during puberty, and they go towards your sexual organs and like stimulate hormone growth in your sexual organs as well. Okay, so LH and FSH are definitely both involved in menstruation. So they stimulate your ovaries to start producing ovum, but they do the same thing in men as well. So those go to like to the testes in men to stimulate testosterone production, and like testosterone in turn would be emitted from there to produce like for sperm production. Okay, so testosterone, this is a male hormone. It doesn't mean that it's not present in females at all. It is present, but generally speaking, like it's much more present in males. Progesterone is a female hormone, and this one is directly associated with the menstrual cycle. Whoa, there's a U in there. Okay, and it kind of like sets off certain things in your body as if you were getting ready to be pregnant. And then once, if your egg is not fertilized, then the levels of progesterone will go down again, because now it's realizing, okay, the egg has passed through and was not fertilized. So now we can like stop getting ready to be pregnant because we're not pregnant this month, okay? And then those levels start to drop again, and then you menstruate. Okay, but even if you don't know the details about these other ones, if you know which hormones are associated with which sex, you would be able to figure out that which one of the following is not involved in menstrual cycle. That would be testosterone, because generally speaking, testosterone is the male hormone. Okay, I'm just going to grab the checklist again really quick while we're on this. For reproductive system, which we spent a lot of time looking into, and I think is important for you to have understood for your life. I think it's important that you learn those things. All it's saying is I can name the hormones responsible for the formation of spermatozoa, follicle stimulating hormone FSH, luteinizing hormone LH, and testosterone. So I think the question that they're going to give you is going to be very similar to this, but it's going to be asking you about sperm production. So it'll say which one of these hormones is not associated with sperm production, okay? And then one of the answers that they give you will be either estrogen or progesterone, and you need to know that those are female hormones, so those will be the wrong answer. Like, I'm just guessing, but I think that is what they would be asking you about that. So you don't need to know any of the other details we talked about from reproductive system, and we talked about different kinds of STIs and pregnancy and everything like that. All of those things are super important for you to understand for your life, but I guess they don't think it's worth putting on our exam. Weird. Okay, next question. Question 7, look at that. This is talking about Earth and space. Do we need to know that? No, we didn't do Earth and space. So we're going to go ahead and skip number 7. Okay, question 8 says Johnny has to identify an unknown gas. So now we're doing a chemistry question here. So in this case, we have to match up some kind of unknown gases. So he says he's given the information in the tables below. So he has an unknown gas. We have color, odor, mass, volume, and reaction to glowing splint. Okay, and then down here we have gas, reaction to glowing splint, density, and color. Okay, so the thing that's important to check out here is it's always a good idea when they give you these kinds of questions for you to figure out which one of these are characteristic properties. Okay, so we talked about properties and characteristic properties. Characteristic properties are the ones that allow you to clearly identify what you're talking about. Okay, so the characteristic properties that we talked about in this unit were melting point, boiling point. Okay, we talked about those things. We also talked about density and solubility. Okay, so in this table, they didn't really give us any of those things. So color is not one. There's no color for this gas, but most of them don't have color. Okay, and it's not even down. Oh yeah, they are down here. All of them are colorless. So that's not going to help you narrow it down. So that's not helping us really. Odorless. Okay, it doesn't even talk about odor down here, so that's not going to help us either. Then we have mass and volume here, which we're going to come back to in a second. And then it says reaction to glowing splint, none. So right down here, immediately, I don't know if you guys can see everything properly. Immediately we would be able to, well, it's not really a characteristic property, but here in reaction to glowing splint, this one's saying that it extinguishes the glowing splint. So it would give me the thought process that maybe it's not carbon dioxide because there's a kind of a difference here. But the only other thing we can do, since it has density and we have mass and volume, like we need mass and volume to calculate density. So you're gonna have to actually do a calculation here, okay? So you have to kind of remember that density equals mass over volume. Okay, and it would be a good idea to pay attention to the units here, because when I was doing it, I was worried for a second about conversion, but it's here we have something that's in grams and we have something that's in milliliters, and they actually wrote density in grams per milliliter. So you don't have to do any conversion. You just need to do mass divided by volume, and then you could see which one has the same density here. So if I just do 0.0057 divided by 3.16, I should get 0.0018038, okay? But compared to the answers that we have here, I'm going to look and see if any of them are similar. So right away, this doesn't look similar, this doesn't look similar, but here I have two, and I have to make sure that I choose the right one with the amount of the amount of decimal places that are there, because they look quite similar, but it's 0.0018. And plus, we already said down here that this one says reaction to glowing splint, this one extinguishes, but realistically, it's the density that you should be looking at, because that's a characteristic property. Okay, so this one has a matching density, so your answer should be helium gas, which was A. All right, moving on. Seems like you guys don't have a lot of questions. If you do, please type them in while I'm doing this. All right, question 9. Many different types of substances exist in the human body. Which of the following combinations lists only pure substances? Okay, so pure substance. The thing is, when we were talking about, so now you have to bring in knowledge about the body, but you also have to bring in chemistry knowledge about pure substances and mixtures. So a pure substance can be an element or a compound. So it's important to remember that compounds count as pure substances as well, okay? So otherwise, the opposite of other than that, it could be a mixture, okay? So air is pretty general. I would say air is a mixture of different things. Calcium is an element. Oxygen is an element. And urine as well. Urine is also a mixture of water and urea, which is made of a whole bunch of different things, okay? So right away, this one, since it has urine and air, I'm going to cross that out. The next one is talking about blood, cells, oxygen, and water. Okay, well, blood is also a mixture, because blood has red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. So that's a mixture of a bunch of things, okay? So we can't see, from the naked eye, we're not able to see that there's different constituents inside blood, but under a microscope, we can see that it's a mixture. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cross that out right away, because blood's a mixture. C says carbon dioxide, glucose, iron, and oxygen. Okay, well, this is actually going to be our answer, but I just want to be clear, carbon dioxide is CO2, which is a compound. Iron is an element that we saw, and oxygen is an element that we saw. Okay, but so it would just be O really, but we know that they travel in packs, so it's O2. But glucose, we did talk about glucose quite a bit as what we break down sugars into. So, but just so you guys know, you do not need to memorize this, but glucose is also a compound, and the code for glucose is C6H12O6. So it's a bit of more of a complex compound that we have, but it's also a compound, all right? So it counts as a pure substance. And then underneath, blood, CO2, glucose, and urine. So again, it has urine and it has blood in it, which we know are mixtures, so that one's no good. Okay, so number 9 should have been C. Number 10. Almost done, you guys. Okay, so number 10 says an active person can produce several liters of sweat a day. So pores in our skin allow the sweat to exit. Which one of the choices below represents the process of sweat evaporating from a person's skin using the particle model? Okay, so we're talking about sweat and it's evaporating. So what I'm looking for in evaporation is going from liquid to gas. Okay, so you need to remember what the details are for the particle model as well. So if they're really, really, really tight together and they can't like kind of move independently, then that would be a solid. So out of these images, like this is for sure our solid image. Okay, and if we look at these other ones here, like this is supposed to be, the ones that are the farthest apart that are moving freely is a gas. And then these ones that's in between, like they're kind of sliding over each other, that's a liquid. Okay, so we're looking for liquid to gas. So if you check these out, no, this D, this would be our liquid and this would be our gas. So our answer is D. Okay, so if we move on, question 11 and 12. All right, so this one, question 11, falls a little bit more into the unit that we didn't really see too much about, biotechnology, but we did talk about this briefly in class. So it says Christine and Richard have been discussing options for assisted reproduction, so fertility treatments, with their doctor. Christine's fallopian tubes are blocked due to scarring from chlamydia infection. So it says, which process will be part of Christine's fertility treatment? So if she's not able to develop necessarily her own eggs, okay, like if you look at these right away, use of an intrauterine device, this is for, this is like a form of birth control. Okay, so they're not trying to do birth control, they're trying to have a baby. So right away, I'm going to cross out IUD. That's a kind of birth control that we talked about. Vaccination against HPV. That also is not going to help in this case. So this is a form of STI prevention. So that's no good. The only two here that are talking about assisted reproduction are artificial insemination and in vitro fertilization. So this one, artificial insemination, would be if there was problem with sperm reaching egg. Okay, so like if for whatever reason it was constantly killing all the sperm that was making it through. The second one though, in vitro fertilization, that is kind of what we consider to be like a test tube baby. Okay, so that is when you take one of the eggs out from the, when you take one of the eggs out of the ovaries and you take part of this, like you take some sperm and it's fertilized in a lab and grown a little bit, and then later on it would be taken once it's ready and implanted directly into the uterus. So this is a case where you have a functional uterus, but you would have problem with like because she's not able to make to get her own, she can't get her eggs down her fallopian tubes because she has scarring in here. So that would be the one that they would have to use. So in vitro fertilization is the only one that would help in assisted reproduction in this particular case. Okay? I don't believe we're going to have questions about this on our exam because we went over it very briefly. It's not on our checklist at all, and it would have fallen more under the biotechnology stuff, but we did talk about this in class. Okay. Question 12, last one. The statements below are examples of systems under physical constraints. So this one is actually talking about tech a little bit more, and it's saying which one of the systems below is an example of tension. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly name what all of the physical constraints are that we talked about. I'm going to put them on the side here. So we talked about compression. There was tension, which is what we're looking at. There's torsion, which sounds really similar, but it's different. Bending and shearing. Okay? So the first one, when it says scissors cutting through a newspaper. So shearing, we talked about anytime when it's like scissors or cutting something like that, this would be shearing. Okay, twisting a balloon into a balloon animal. So if there's a twisting motion, that would be torsion. So the example that we had of torsion was what we were looking at when you tighten a screw onto something. It's kind of like a spiral motion, okay? Then this one says crushing a can in a recycling process. So if you're crushing something, that would be compressing it. So that's compression. And the last one, suspending a wrecking ball at the end of a wire. Okay, so something suspending it from a wire that's pulling something tight and it's creating tension on that rope. Okay, so D would be the answer, tension. Okay, so that's the last question that I had from this package. Is there anything particular? Does anyone have any questions from the checklist or something specific that they would like me to go over here with you? I'm going to wait like 30 seconds here and then I'm going to press stop if nobody has any questions. But I would definitely go over some more stuff if you have any more questions right now. Okay, so let me just see here. Julie said the last three on the checklist are confusing. So let me just grab the checklist right now. Okay, so the last 2 pages of the checklist are talking about technological world. So is it this stuff on the last page? I'm assuming it's this stuff, Julie. So I can describe the constraints to which different technical objects are subject. Okay, so it's talking about those exactly the ones that I just wrote on the side here, these 5 right here, but they were actually even nice enough to write 3, so I guess they're going to ask you about one of these things. So you need to understand, like, if they named something, like they just did in this question, which one of the systems below is an example of tension, like, you would need to know how to associate these. So if something's using scissors, you'd need to know that's shearing. If it's twisting, that's torsion. If it's crushing something, that's compression. Or if it's like suspension, so forming some kind of tight line, that would be tension. So you would need to be able to match those kinds of things up. So it's like question 12 that we just did is like a perfect example for this part. Okay, then after that it says I can describe the mechanical properties of different materials. So we did a whole section. To be honest, like a lot of this, you did these things with Mr. Mitchell when I wasn't there. And there's a whole list. Well, we went over them at lunchtime during lunchtime tutorial on Friday. But like you need to be able to, there's a bunch of different mechanical properties. You need to be able to understand hardness, ductility, elasticity, malleability. So there was a question also in the previous practice exam where they gave you, when it was asking you about using stainless steel as a material for the microscope stand, I think it was like asking you to explain using these properties why that was the right choice. So you need to be able to understand what these are. Like I said, for tech, there's a whole PowerPoint that was titled Materials, and that's on the website for sure, but we can go over that on Monday if you want to, if you're not sure about that. But all of this was in, like, actually all 3 of these things were in that one set of slides. This part I went over with you guys, but this part was with Mr. Mitchell. But like I said, we can review that, and we reviewed it at lunchtime on Friday. And then the last part says, I can associate the use of different types of materials with their respective properties. So like you would need to know, I think it's definitely talking about like, I think they're going to have some question where it asks you why you would use certain types of materials. But like ferrous alloys, it says cast iron is harder than steel. Okay, like you would need to be able, first of all, to understand what a ferrous alloy is. So alloys is like a mixture based in metal. So steel is not actually, like, a lot of the metals we talk about are metals that we find directly in the ground, but an alloy is like something like steel, which is not found in the ground. Steel is made using mostly iron. So if it says ferrous, Fe is for fer, right, which is iron. So ferrous alloys is still an alloy, but it's based in specifically in iron. Okay, but basically, I think there's going to be a large question in part C in the tech area where you're going to have to, like we had in the previous practice exam, you're going to have to explain why a certain material is the right choice. So you need to be able to bring in density, explain why like hardness would be a factor, explain why ductility is a factor, elasticity, malleability. I think they're going to ask you since they wrote these 4 in the checklist, and you also already for another section need to know how to use density. I'm assuming it will be these 4 and density, and they'll ask you why that's the right choice. Okay, so if you want to go over this stuff in class, we can totally go over that in class. We have 2 days. I'm just going to go over whatever you guys need me to go over for those 2 days. And then afterwards, I'm going to continue to do some live streams for review and make some videos. Okay, so does anybody else, so yeah, again, we did this in class. Does anybody have any other questions from the checklist? Maybe even just write no or something so that I at least know that you have time to like answer me, because like I don't really know how long to wait since you're not saying anything. Okay, Julie says it makes sense now. It was just weirdly worded. Cool. People are good? Julie, thanks for answering me. You the best. Thanks, Katie. Kate, sorry. Okay, all right, so everybody else is good. I'm just going to, if you have any other questions, send me an email. We'll do a couple more live streams this week to go over more of the part C and the tech unit stuff. Okay? Have a good rest of the weekend.